Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar. I want to keep this video a little short and sweet. I was going to talk about butt plugs getting leaked. Not in that way, mostly when it comes to a hack. I might still talk about it because it's actually incredibly hilarious. But, you know, the internet is this place that's rapidly changing. And today's video, I'm not going to just get into the doom and gloom. I'm going to teach you guys how to take back a little bit of your privacy in a way that the government can't just take away from you, okay? I'm going to tell you how to keep your stuff hidden as you post it all over the internet without the big bad government looking into every single part of your life. Now, the reason I'm talking about this is I saw this. The EU, one of the biggest areas and zones in the world, could be scanning your chat messages in October 2025, which is not too far away. It's like, what, 2 months? So the reason why this really hits me is that even though that I'm not from the EU, I'm not doubting that plenty of countries around the world are implementing their own laws. Whether you be from Canada, whether you be from the United States, whether you be from Europe, whether you be from like Africa, you know, any part, all these countries, all these corporations want to take away the little bit of privacy that you have. Now, privacy is a human right, okay? You deserve privacy. I want to ask you a simple question. Do you like coming home and leaving your door open and letting your entire fucking world look inside your house and everything that you do? When you go and, I don't know, fucking relax for the evening and do something in private, do you want the entire world to just look into it? And I'm pretty sure 99.9% of you guys and gals don't, okay? Unless you're like some exhibitionist fucking freak, maybe so. But the thing about this is, obviously I wanted to read a little bit closer, and it comes out that this is apparently something known as chat control. So chat control aims to halt the spread of CSAM content online by scanning all communications, especially encrypted ones. So again, CSAM, for anybody that doesn't know, is child sexual assault material, which obviously, you know, the long and short of it is that it is just child pornography, okay? It's really illegal material. Now, before we go into it and somebody goes, but Muta, don't you want this kind of filthy stuff to be stopped? Absolutely. I think most people do. Everyone, I think, really enjoys watching some of the most illegal stuff stopped. But the thing is, I'm also somebody that cares about privacy, and I don't trust the government when they say, think of the children, guys. Because generally speaking, like I said in yesterday's video, I think a lot of this stuff is sort of a gateway into a surveillance state internationally, all over the world. No matter where you are, this is sort of the, like, excuse that these countries and these governments and these corporations take in order to erode our rights, just so they can say we're protecting the children, even though there's been a history of basically some of the world's largest police forces, agencies, governments, finding ways to scan our information, okay? I've talked about the FBI, I've talked about all these organizations. Give them an inch, they will take a mile. They will run all your messages, all your emails, through artificial intelligence, and God forbid you say something naughty, God forbid you don't suck the taint of the government, they might do something drastic to you. They might silence you. They might debank you. They might push for your life to be more miserable than you might expect, okay? Especially if you're somebody that's dissenting against a tyrannical fascist government, okay? There's plenty of places in the world, like Iran, like China, and maybe even the United States to an extent nowadays, where you have to be able to have some privacy and push back to the government pushing into your life, okay? I think that's a basic human right, and that should be protected. Now, I'm not running for fucking public office here. I'm just giving you my perspective and why I'm so passionate about this topic. So again, when you go down over here, experts worry that the new obligations undermine encryption protections. So encryption is something that, you know, apps like WhatsApp, Signal, Proton Mail, and of course a lot of VPNs that, you know, push for encryption do. They turn data into a garbled, unreadable mess, though when it flows through the internet tubes, nobody is able to look into it. But obviously, when it comes to this specific ruling, they want to be able to pre-scan on the client side all the information before it's packed up and sent. Now, the thing is, obviously, a lot of organizations will go out of their way to scan for CSAM information, right? They will do what they can to stop illegal things. For instance, Apple implemented a CSAM detection system. This is a write-up from 2021. I've obviously shown it before, but the way that this kind of stuff works is obviously they have hashes, which they've grabbed from NCMEC or other organizations, and what a hash is it's not necessarily a, image of something illegal, it's just the hash calculation of an illegal image. So for instance, on an actual phone or a device, when, you have images, they generate hashes, and those hashes are calculated against, illegal hashes, and if there is a match that is found, then of course things can be decrypted, you can have legal cases started, so on and so forth. And again, an example of this could be something like this. This image and this image appear to have a pretty similar hash because they're the same image. Obviously, there's more data that's being checked. And this image compared to this image is different. The hashes are different because the image itself is entirely different, as you can tell. Now, what I just showed you, I believe Apple hasn't even implemented that. In fact, I believe it was actually scrapped. And it shows you kind of the dangerous side of, hey, we want to stop illegal material, but even these big tech companies have a hard time finding a way, that perfect balance between privacy, user safety, security, so on and so forth. So again, it's a complicated mess, and it doesn't help the fact that politicians are kind of jamming through legislation when they don't understand how these things even work. If the tech companies are having an issue, you can't just shotgun your way through these things without logically thinking them through, which I don't think these governments are really doing. Now, the thing about this is that really baffles me is don't think for a second that if you're a politician or you're in the fucking military or you work for an intelligence agency, that you follow under the same rules. Again, a lot of these politicians that are pushing this privacy busting shit onto you are not going to be using it themselves. They'll get all the privacy they want. You, however, the user, lose every single aspect of it because they'll just say they want to protect the children. And if you push back against it, they'll say, what, you don't care about the kids? Obviously we care about kids. We just don't care about losing our basic human rights in the process. It's like looking at things like Windows, for instance. Like a couple days ago, an executive at Microsoft said that somewhere in 2030, using a computer, at least Microsoft Windows, will be done through voice and artificial intelligence. So the days of fucking, AIs that you see in sci-fi shit, we're going to be talking with them. They'll say the world of mousing around and typing will feel as alien as it does to Gen Z to use MS-DOS. So yeah, they want to make sure that the computer will be able to see what we see, hear what we hear, and we can talk to it and ask it to do much more sophisticated things. And a lot of this, I assume, is going to be done through AIs that are connected to servers. So no matter what, you'll still always be giving up your fucking personal life just to use your computer. It's one of the reasons why I push Linux a lot, because even if I know you don't want to switch to Linux, I at least want you, the viewer, to know that there is some, competition. There is an alternative that you can dig up, an alternative operating system, for instance, that you can run and you can modify to your own specifications. You don't need to have Microsoft's AI spying bullshit if you don't want to. And, honestly, I've played enough Deus Ex to know that the world is headed to a very fucking heavy surveillance state when things like our private messages will no longer be private if these things are pushed. Now, even sites like Signal, for instance, are not sites, services. I use Signal to talk to my buddies Amaru and Kyle, and what it is, it's effectively like a chat messaging service with a lot of encryption baked into it. Now, we use this because, generally speaking, we have different smartphones. Like, you can have Android, you can have iPhones, and for us, messaging to each other is done through something like Signal, right? Which means we don't have to pay texting fees, we get all the benefits of encryption, and all of that good stuff. But the thing is, even Signal is considering if this passes, they may have to stop servicing this entire region. And what a kick in the nuts when people are losing access to privacy features that they have basically been taken for fucking granted. So you might be like, Muda, you started this video off by saying that you were going to give us a way to fight back. And I'm going to take you guys back to the old days of what we call pretty good privacy. Now, pretty good privacy is an encryption standard that came out in 1991. And it's got to be pretty goddamn good when the individual behind it is investigated by the fucking US government, on criminal investigations. Because again, whenever you create something that finally threatens the government or big corporations, they will send the entire goddamn law on you. So to use this, what you want to do is you want to get an application known as Cleopatra, for instance. Now, Cleopatra is an application that you can use underneath Linux, underneath Windows, and you might need to do something different with Mac. But generally you download this, and this is effectively what it looks like. Now, to give you an idea of how this stuff effectively works, ladies and gentlemen, what you do, PGP was basically made, kind of for emails back in the day, and I'll show you exactly how it works. So once you get this application open, you want to go to File, you want to go to New Open PGP Key Pair. So as soon as you go over here, you want to put in your name, right? So I'm going to put in Mutahar, and again, you can put in an email. So you can put in something like mutahar@email.com. Now, generally speaking, what will happen is, some of these softwares will ask you want to protect the keys with a passphrase, and you absolutely do. So again, you put in a password, and as soon as it's done, it'll actually create a new key pair for you. So once this key pair is effectively made, you see Mutahar right over here has two sets of keys, a public key and a private key. So when I right-click my name, I can export what appears to be a public key. So this public key is actually very important. Now when I open up that public key, for instance, right over here, if I just open it with a text editor, this is what a public key looks like. Now if you've ever seen my dark web browsing series, this should look pretty similar to you. So basically you take this key and you can put it on a website, or you can just share it with the people that you want to talk to privately. Now they will take this key and they will go to their actual software and they will import that key, that public key right here. Now, for instance, just for the sake of this video in particular, I went to an online PGP key generator and I made a key for a guy named Joey at email.com. Now again, I went with the RSA encryption method, I went with 4,996 bits, and of course I gave it a, timeline of 1 year, right? And of course I gave it a password. So what this did was generated a public key, and it also generated a private key. Now if you're somebody that wants your privacy, you will never share your private key. This private key is meant for you to use when decrypting things. Now, how this works, for instance, is let's say you want to send somebody a message, right? Well, first you want to also build your own set of keys. So you get a file, new open PGP key pair, and let's say you want to give your name, right? Mutahar, for instance. email.com, right? Now you could also provide a passphrase, which I highly recommend you do because you don't want to store your private keys as a plain text, for instance. You don't want to store anything that could just be opened and basically pilfered through. So again, hit OK. It'll generate a new OpenPGP certificate. Now right over here, this is my certificate, and this is the certificate of somebody named John, for instance. Now let's say I wanted to send John a message, right? Now since I have John's public key, and John has a private key that he can use to decrypt any message that was encoded for his public key, all I have to do is effectively just go to something like the Notepad and say, hey, here is a message. Now, of course, this is obviously nothing crazy, but you could write an entire long message, or you could write, paragraphs upon paragraphs. And then, of course, at this point, what you want to do is, under the recipients, you can encrypt for, let's say, Mutahar. Or you can encrypt for somebody else, right? Like, for instance, it would be this John character. Now, this message, this long string of information, is your encrypted message. So if you're not picking up something right now, you could theoretically go to any messaging service, like, for instance, I have Google Messages. Now, this is just a random, thing that I opened up in Google Messages, but let's assume that, I'm talking to John over here. I can paste this entire PGP message and send it to John. John can copy this message and then decrypt it. So for instance, let's go to the decryption side of it, right? Let's put that whole message in, and of course, let's hit decrypt. So it says decryption actually isn't possible because there's no secret key. Because again, I didn't input John's secret key, which we'll actually do right now. So let's input that secret key, which is why you should never be leaking this out to anybody. This should be just for you. So of course, as we do this, we can input that as my certificate, for instance, just for the sake of this video. And now if we try to decrypt this message, it'll ask for a passphrase, which I have password, okay, so an extra layer of security. And once everything is done, boom, here is the decrypted message. So this may seem really complicated, but if you're somebody that cares about your privacy first, and you want to find a way where governments just can't grab your information, this is an old tried and true method. Now, it isn't foolproof, it isn't perfect, it definitely has its flaws and weaknesses. But it's better than having actually nothing, especially in an age where governments want to be pilfering through our messages and basically putting us into a situation where we live in the world of Deus Ex or Minority Report, whatever weird futuristic dystopia that the world is slowly crafting into. But this is by far one of the best ways that you can fight back. And yes, it has its limitations, but I think people are going to have to start digging up these technologies and really figuring out how this stuff works. Because the more and more these governments, the more and more these agencies want to take away our actual human rights, the more I think it becomes a requirement for, anybody to teach people how to get just a glimpse of that privacy back. But I think teaching you how to encrypt your messages and your texts is a borderline important thing to be doing. And if we start losing applications that basically do this, except even better with end-to-end encryption, like a more robust form, if they take those apps away, this is the only way for you to send messages across the world with pretty good privacy over effectively the most unsecure methods. If I sent this message to anybody that I was talking to over the internet, there's a pretty good chance that the government will look at this garbled message and try to at least understand and get this. And sure, they could obtain these messages if, for instance, they grabbed everyone's private keys, right, inside these message chains. But the thing is, with the password that we provided, the encryption that we gave, those keys shouldn't be stored in plain text, at least in theory. So basically, the idea is, ladies and gentlemen, pretty good privacy is kind of on its way back. And honestly, back in the day, this was used for emails. On the dark web, it was used to actually securely transit messages. Because even if sites were infested with like fucking glowies, there was still ways to at least communicate without the glowies knowing every single thing against you. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mutahar, and take back your privacy. Fight back. Okay, there's ways to do it. You use things like PGP, just as a starter. But you know what? Hopefully things do change, but if they don't, here are some means to at least hold yourself off. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out.